Does it ever feel like no one's really talking about the true struggles that every single musician has to go through whenever they start to become an independent musician and they've made the decision that I'm going to strive to make music my livelihood? No one really talks about the foundational struggles. I mean, they talk about the basic stuff, but today I'm going to be breaking down the 7 core struggles that are holding a lot of musicians back, and most importantly, what to do about it. So let's think about it like this for a second. As a musician who's trying to make this your career, you are basically a small business owner. Now, I know a lot of people are like, but it's like that's fundamentally what you are. You're starting this little small music business and you're trying to grow it into a big music business. So that way you can create a livelihood from it, right? So one of the things that you need to understand is that the thing that will have the greatest impact on your business, your music business, is your mindset. Really, success is about like 20% strategies and 80% the psychology of the owner. Because I remember times in my own music business where I would be sitting there and the reason I wasn't progressing and moving forward is because there was something going on up here that was preventing me from actually taking action to my fullest potential and really going for it. So today, one of the 7 struggles that you probably deal with is insecurity, right? So one of the mental blocks that I see a lot in artists is insecurity. Whether it's our view counts. I know a lot of artists who will post content and they'll start the journey, right? But then they'll start deleting content because it's not performing well. And that's a dangerous thing because now what does that do? What is that telling us that we're doing? Well, it tells us that we're looking for external validation to determine our worth from our own perspective, right? We're putting our content out there, and if it doesn't get 1 million views or 1,000 views, we're like, oh, it clearly failed. Well, here's the thing. This maybe have been said before, but it's worth repeating. If you were in front of 200 people, and they were all like, yeah, that was cool, you would be very, like, if that was a gig, that'd be a pretty decent gig. A 200-person gig? Yeah, it beats a poke in the eye, right? Well, a lot of people don't feel the same way about their content. They get 200 people to check out their content, and they're like, oh, it flopped. I'm like, what do you mean it flopped? You had 200 people go check it out. So a lot of this is coming from this external validation that we're looking for. We're looking for some kind of like magic number to pop up on every single one of our videos that's going to make us feel good. It's going to inflate really what is our ego. But here's the thing. I notice a lot of artists are not only struggling with this idea of putting out content and worrying about external validation, but they're also struggling with imposter syndrome, right? For example, you're not the billionaire, musician. You're not Taylor Swift, right? I know some people hated that I used her as an example, but I'm doing it anyway. Let's say Taylor Swift, she's worth millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars. And it's like, if we're not that, we somehow feel like we can't live out the type of life we would like to live out if things were all going well for us. Now, I know this is I probably said that too fast. And so let me break that down for a second. What happens is we think until I'm at this certain level, then I can feel like I'm justified to behave a certain way, right? Now that can go down a bad rabbit hole, but what I mean is, like, for example, you may want to be the type of person that, I don't know, drives around the city with the windows down and you pull up and you go and eat at whatever restaurant you want to eat at. Like, I don't know, maybe that's like the vision you have, or maybe like you have a vision for yourself where you're more outgoing and you're willing just to go up to strangers and be like, hey, how's it going? Maybe that's like a better version of yourself, or whatever this higher conceptualized version of you that you're striving for, whatever that is that you're moving towards and that you're aiming for in life. You do not have to have accomplished that to start to feel like that. So it's kind of like the concept of, like, you can live your life like a millionaire before you are one. So what does that mean? What that means is you should start creating the habits that the type of person you're trying to become would have. You guys may have heard me talk about this concept that I got from Myron Golden, which is be, do, have. Okay? So if you start to become the type of person that you're striving to become, you will start to do the things that you need to do to have that ultimate end goal that you're visualizing, right? But a lot of people think that they will never be unless they have, when really the work needs to be done to just start being that person to begin with, so that you can start to do what's necessary, and then you will eventually have what you desire. But if you think that you're going to have without becoming that person and then therefore doing the work, it's never going to happen. It's just not. So that's one of the biggest cures I've found to imposter syndrome and seeking other people's validity is like, okay, I'm not going to try to become the person who cares about what every single solitary person thinks about me, right? I care about what my wife thinks about me. I care about, what my spirituality cares about me, but like I don't care about what general people not outside my inner circle think about me, right? Why do I do that? Because that's the type of person that I needed to become in order to do what I do. And that's, help musicians and stuff, but it's also being a musician myself and doing all those other things. You need to start at the become level before you can start to reach the have level. And that will start to reframe what you're focusing on. You won't be focusing on, oh, I'm out there and I posted something and the numbers aren't, you're not looking outside. You're looking inside to say, am I becoming each day closer and closer to that type of person that I actually am striving to be? And when you're focusing inwards and you're focusing on yourself compared to who you were yesterday, as opposed to comparing yourself to all the other people out there that are way further along in their journey, who you can't compare yourself to if you're being, literal with it, but the human mind will still make comparisons, right? That harm us. So if you start with this level of, I'm going to focus on becoming the type of person I need to become, that will start to trigger the habits and things necessary so that I can have the result I want, right? So let's move on to the next struggle. So at first, it's like we dealt with insecurity. What's the next thing that we're dealing with? A lot of musicians deal with anxiety. Anxiety is an extremely powerful unmotivator when it comes down to the music business, because when it comes down to it, our industry is uncertain. Your income as an artist is all over the place, right? You're not able to say, like a doctor can say, if I spend 8 years or so at school, 10 years, whatever, in school, I will eventually become a surgeon and I will eventually get a job and I will eventually get all the health benefits and everything. Like there's a trajectory there that is pretty certain. With an artist and a musician, it's not as certain. Our path is a lot windier and bumpier. Why so? Because we're entrepreneurs fundamentally. When you're an entrepreneur, that is a windy road to try to make work, but it can work. You just got to be able to go through the winds and learn the things you need to learn to avoid mistakes from the last time. Because when you're going into the music business, there's a lot of anxiety because it's risky. Right? That's the biggest thing, is it's risky to become a professional musician. That's why I don't tell everyone on this channel, hey, go quit your day job tomorrow and become a professional musician full time. That's not a very good strategy, right? Because why? You would be overwhelmed with such anxiety about where the next paycheck is going to come from, right? So how do you decrease the risk of anything? Because if you can decrease the risk about something, it's going to ease off the anxiety that you're feeling about that thing. So what can we do to combat that uncertainty of the career path of a musician? Well, to decrease risk, increase knowingness. I know that's kind of it sounds like a Chinese proverb or something, but fundamentally what that means is if you're trying to get involved in anything, and you want to understand how to approach it better, you have to increase your knowledge base. You have to start to learn how this works. How does success work? How does entrepreneurship work? How does motivation work? These are things that some people find cliche. Some people find it cliche to look at motivational material. And for me, what I think of is, what are you putting inside your brain? right? What are you putting inside of your mind? Because that will ultimately color how we experience life. And so if you're consuming content and stuff that's basically telling you, oh, everything's uncertain, you'll never make it, well, then you're going to have all these feelings of doubt and all these kinds of painful things, right? But if we're sitting there and we're like, no, listen, I get that it's risky to do this, but what I can do to decrease my risk is understand more of what I'm getting myself into, understand more of what this business looks like. How do I actually promote myself? How do I monetize my audience? How do I scale and grow? You know, these are things that are very, very what's the word I'm looking for? Not underappreciated, but there's a lot of people that aren't willing to go like really dive into that stuff. Now, clearly you guys are on this channel, so you're people that are willing to learn more about the music business. So kudos to you. But there's a lot of artists out there that are struggling with this. And so the main point of anxiety is if you want to decrease your anxiety about being a professional musician, you've got to start to learn more about how this works. Because if you know how something works, even if you're not getting the results you want to get immediately, you know how it works. And you know if you just keep at it, you will get it figured out. Like there's a story that I like to tell in this sort of, it fits this scenario, which is there was a plane that was flying over the Amazon, and then something goes wrong with the engine and it crashes into the middle of the Amazon. Okay, so there's only a few survivors, and one of the survivors just kind of looks around and has a machete, and it's a very confident man, and he's sitting there, and he's like, let's say he's like a Steve Irwin type. He's like, oh, I'm going to cut through here. No, I'm not going to do any more accents, I promise. But he starts cutting through the Amazon, right? And he's like an expert. He's just cutting through that thing. He's what most people would say, he's working real hard. He's working real hard. Because what do people always say? Oh, the solution is hard work. You just keep working hard. And what does he keep doing? He's working real hard, cutting into the forest. And everyone just sort of follows him because he seems confident. And then one person stays back and goes, And he climbs up a tree and he goes, hey, you're making really good, progress through the forest there. There's only one problem. You're cutting in the wrong direction. You're cutting deeper into the forest. Civilization's that way. Now I want you to think about the lesson that's learned here. We have to go to a higher vantage point. We have to see more of what is going on around us to make more accurate decisions that will ultimately lead to better outcomes, right? A lot of musicians are in the forest. They're on the ground. They're surrounded by the high brush and the trees, and they're just like, I don't know where I'm at. I'm in the jungle, basically, of the music business. How do we decrease the risk of being lost in the jungle? We have to increase our vantage point so that we can see more, right? And what happens when you can see more? You can see the path that you'd like to go and the path that works, heading to civilization, versus the path that doesn't work, leading deeper into the forest. So the analogy there is to decrease risk, increase knowingness. So you have to start to commit to really learning how this business works, but business generally speaking. I would argue that learning how business works is almost as valuable as learning how this specific business works. Because a lot of the stuff that you learn about this business is like how crappy the institutions of this business are and how you have to avoid getting screwed over. Whereas learning about business, generally speaking, and how that works will help you make better business decisions in your music business. So I'm a big proponent of teaching and learning business strategies as opposed to like industry tactics. That's my whole thing here at this channel is independent music business, as opposed to here's how you get signed with a label and then they own all your stuff and then control you forever. So anyway, the next point, the third struggle that a lot of musicians and artists deal with is isolation. Isolation is a son of a gun because really it comes from this one simple fact. No one really gets it. That's the truth, y'all, and you guys understand this. You talk to people sometimes about what you're passionate about, and they just don't see it the same way that you do. And it's not because they're thinking anything negative about you or there's something wrong about you because they don't think the same way you do, but it's just this idea of sometimes you want to be able to share things. You want to talk about things. You want to bounce ideas off of people, and you just want to get deeper and deeper into a particular subject, but other people are just not interested in it. It's not their thing. So you'll be sitting there and be like, man, I'm spending so much time creating content and I have 2 jobs, and I'm trying to create content for my music business. I really just figured out, like, I need to understand time management better. So do you have any time management tips? And they're like, dude, I don't care about time management. I just watched the football game yesterday, and I want to talk about that, or I want to talk about March Madness, or I want to talk about what's going on in politics or the news. And it's like, and you're just like, I don't resonate with that. I want to talk about this because it's on my mind, and I'm passionate about this, and I wish I was surrounded by people who were passionate about this like I am. So here's what I would say to you. There's 2 solutions to isolation. Number 1 is you've got to find a group of people that are doing what you want to do with the enthusiasm and the character that you would like to have in your business, and start trying to associate with them as much as possible. But here's what I know. I know a lot of people are like, Dax, I don't have a big circle. I don't know a lot of people around here. I understand. As you're trying to figure this out, there's some things that you can do. What I recommend is you protect your mind like the Pentagon, right? Like, you really protect the information that goes into your mind, and you protect the associations and the influences that impact you. So for me, whenever I did my audit of my circle, I cut off people who were negative people that brought me down every time I was around them. I stopped consuming music that made me feel more sad and, isolated as a consequence, as opposed to music that made me feel empowered and made me feel excited or just happy or whatever. I stopped consuming social media content that was negative. Here's a big tip for you guys. I understand people say that you need to be informed. Get politics and news out of your feed as quick as humanly possible. It is just an absolute mental vampire. It's exactly what it is. What I started doing, and some people are like, I started filling my content with motivational material. I started filling it with, like, Tony Robbins, Lewis, what's his name? Lewis Howes? Is that how you say his last name? Howes. Yeah, Howes. Lewis Howes. Like, Jordan Peterson. All these different, like, positive influences that, like, now sometimes Jordan goes political, and I have to get away from it. But the mindset stuff, the psychology stuff, that stuff is very powerful. And so I just started consuming a lot of different pieces of content that were about betterment. Like, how do you improve on yourself? If you like business stuff, Alex Hermosi is a really good one. And there's all kinds of different people out there. Some of you guys are into different things. Maybe you're into fitness. What is a positive thing that is a thing that makes you better? Fill your feed up with that content. So for me, learning about business, learning about personal, emotional management and motivation, learning about health, learning about economics and how that sort of stuff works has been helpful to me, because now my feed is just filled up with stuff that is serving me. Of course, I have my favorite artists in there as well. But, generally speaking, I'm trying to fill my feed up with not just like my friends and stuff like that, but information that's going to put me in a better state, because that helps me feel connected to the people even when I'm not around them, right? So if you're around even a digital group of people, you've never met them face to face, but you have this relationship through a Facebook group or a whatever, that helps with the feeling of isolation, because there is some communal thing there. But I know that some people struggle with this communal aspect. So sometimes it's this interplay between trying to be a little bit more extroverted, and go and meet people who are where you want to be and leveling up your inner circle. But then there's also something to be said to help the feeling of isolation, of the fact no one gets it, with surrounding your content, surrounding the content that you're getting on your feed with people who do get it and are trying to actively improve in those areas, right? So that's a better influence on you and will help you feel less isolated as a consequence. Now, the next thing that people deal with, the fourth struggle, is stress. Stress is a huge one because, gosh, this industry, like I mentioned, is so uncertain. Our income will be up 1 month and our income will be down 1 month. I've literally had months in my own band, in my own music business, where we went out on tour. We had a $15,000 tour, profit, and then the next month we made like $300. That is a snapshot of what the music business is like, right? You go from these big paydays to small paydays and big paydays. That's the nature of this business, because a lot of musicians haven't figured out the recurring revenue element of business. And that's something we talk about with our clients all the time, is like, how do you set up systems where you're getting money every month as opposed to relying on one-off sales? Because if you're just relying on one-off sales, that is going to be stressful. Because if you don't, it's like if you sell, t-shirts, if you don't sell the t-shirt, you're not making any money, right? And you have to sometimes pay money to produce the t-shirt and all this kind of different stuff, right? So there's a lot of different things going on. I recommend print by demand if you can. But the big thing is, like, I get it. It's very stressful from the income side, but stress also takes form from the family as well. Now, family could mean a few things. Family could mean like you, your spouse, and your kid, or it could be you and your spouse. It could be you and your mom and dad, or your grandparents, or whoever. You have family that will put stress on you based on this choice that you're making, this path that you're deciding to walk down. Now, this is like, it's real talk, man. You got to understand that you're committing to walk down a path that few go down, and therefore few understand. And because they don't understand it, of course they're going to throw rocks at it, because they don't understand it. Human beings are like that. They're not looking at things they don't understand and go, what is that? I want to learn more about that. No, when it comes down to things we don't understand, we go primal and we start going, we start going, fire, what is this? I don't understand, It reverts back to that. So, don't blame your family too much, but that doesn't mean you have to associate with them. I'm just saying. Some of y'all, I love my dad, but every time I'm around him, he talks negative about my business. It's like, stop hanging around him. Like, forever? Not forever, but long enough for you to get your stuff going and not have someone bringing you down. So that way, when you do see him and he's like, oh yeah, well, how's the business? It's actually going well. What a feeling to be able to say at the next family reunion is like, yeah, things are actually going well. I make music and I make money, and not one or the other. Right? That's something that we should all strive for. In fact, I have a shirt, you can see it in a couple videos ago, that I have that says exactly that, because that's what I think we should all strive for. I think that is a motto of the independent music musician, is like, listen, I make art, I make music, but I also make money, and it's not one or the other. I do both of these things, right? So anyway, how do we combat the stress from family? How do we combat the stress of the income? So the first thing I would say is that it kind of goes back to the anxiety point, which is we have to have a plan. So now that you have like a higher vantage point and you can look around and see what's the best way to go, you can now start to make a plan to get to that place that you're trying to go to, right? So what we're striving for is create some income, right? So you have to get to that vantage point where you learn enough where you can say, I'm going to make income through this method. I'm going to make it through sync licensing. I'm going to make it through selling directly to my fans. I'm going to make it through doing gigs. You're going to have that avenue that, you can make money in every single one of those domains, right? But you're going to have to figure out a plan of execution. And that is ultimately going to give you less stress, because once you come up with the plan, maybe the plan causes a little stress when you're making it, but once you're finished with the plan, you can go, you can breathe, and you can say, I'm now just going to execute the plan. I did all this work because this work is going to tell me what to do. And if I just do what it tells me to do, I should be making some progress. Now, I know some plans are better than others. Some people think, the best thing to do is my goal should be get 1,000 followers on Instagram. It's like, that's probably not a good business goal. I would not necessarily recommend that as something to focus on, because that's you're looking outside for validation type thing, right? What I would make a plan for is, I'm going to get 100 fans. What does a fan mean? That could be someone in your email list. That could be 100 monthly listeners on Spotify. Whatever it happens to be, right? I'm going to get 100 fans. Okay, now what am I going to do? Okay, whatever got me 100 fans, I'm going to go look back and see what got the best results, and I'm going to double down on that until I get 200 fans. And then once you get 200 fans, there's different plans that you can execute on, and they take different durations of time, but you have to make a plan. You have to know what you're going to do. Now, when it comes to family, what do we do about family? You communicate, okay? This is going to be one of the hardest things. You have to stand your ground firm for who you are and what you represent, what you stand for. And so what do I mean? Is if some people start disrespecting your business and they're your family, you should probably tell them, like, listen, you're sort of crossing a boundary right now, and I need you to respect the fact, because we're family and I love you, that you're crossing a boundary and you need to step back over the line, and let's probably talk about something else. You don't have to be rude and be like, I hate the fact that you blah, blah, blah. Just tell them, like, listen, you're crossing a boundary with how you're talking about something that I'm working to make my livelihood, and I don't appreciate how you're talking about it. You don't have to be a rude jerk, but you don't have to just sit there and go, okay, I know it's not I know I could probably never, and then start this self-talk, this negative self-talk where we start diminishing our goals and start going, oh, I know I could possibly never do it, but it's something No. You don't stand in that. You stand in, no, listen, I'm learning how this business works, and I'm actually going to make incremental progress because I have a plan, and I am making progress. I'm growing every day, so I don't appreciate you talking about my business like that. You can stand your ground in a way that demonstrates this is serious, and this is not something to be disrespected. If you're going to be in my inner circle as a musician or artist, you're going to respect that. And that's something that you need to really take into consideration when you're auditing your circle, is who reacts negatively to that. Someone starts being crappy with you, you clearly demonstrate that you're offended, but not in any kind of weird way. You just demonstrate it clearly and concisely, and they start giving you, whatever you think, blah, 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 blah. That's a red flag. That's someone that's like, all right, we get the... Oh, but what happens if they're going to be at a family reunion that I'm going to be at? Well, you can either not talk to them or you can not go, right? You're not sacrificing your mental peace of mind for other people, okay? And ultimately, if you take this dual-sided approach where you start to have a plan in this business, you're going to know where you're going to go, and you're knowing that, like, this is my identity. This is who I am. So if other people don't like it or are trying to put negative influences on me, I'm going to communicate with them that that's not cool, and either you change that or you ain't going to be seeing me very much. You know what I'm saying? So that is struggle number 4, but let's jump to struggle number 5, which is one that I know a lot of people who have spouses, they're in relationships. This is a big one. Guilt. Not a lot of people talk about guilt that artists feel for pursuing their passion. And this kind of comes down to a lot of the stuff I was talking about, where it's like we're so uncertain about our career path that we feel guilt because our partner is not getting someone who is doing the traditional, spend every waking moment of my time with this person outside of work and school type thing, right? It's like sometimes I'm going to be gone for 3-4 weeks because I'm going to be on the road. There's going to be times where you're going to come home and you're not going to really see me because I'm going to be in the studio working on a song all night because I've just, I've got a song that's really jamming, right? Now, there's a limit to these things. You have to also establish boundaries and stuff. That's what we're going to talk about, which is, But I just want to know, I want you to know, it's understandable that people are dealing with this emotion. Guilt is normal until we start to change our frame about it. But we think, oh man, I'm not even making a whole bunch of money right now, and as a consequence, my family or my relationship is struggling harder financially than they otherwise would have if I just caved in and did something that was soul crushing but made some money, right? You're in that dilemma where you feel guilt about pursuing something that's so, in other people's eyes, far-fetched because they have no knowingness, so they don't understand how to decrease the risk. But you're just dealing with that internal conflict. So here's what I would twofold answer as to how do we deal with guilt as an artist. You make peace with the fact that this is the business that you chose. And if you cannot make peace with it, and what does make peace mean? Make peace means that you're able to perform the job to get the results you want to get the results from, but it's not completely ruined by the fact that there's drawbacks to it. You make peace with the fact that the goods will outweigh the bads. And ultimately that comes from communication and understanding from your partner that, listen, you need to understand that by getting involved with me, this is what you're signing up for. And I'm sorry if that's not what you particularly wanted, but this is the life I'm going to live. Excuse me. And therefore, Like, I need you to make peace with the fact that this is the business I'm in. And so sometimes it may be tough, but I promise you that I'll never, ever, like, give you less than my best, right? If you're real serious about this, right? Of course you would say that and mean it. So that's a big thing, is like making peace with that and communicating with your partner, but also change the focus, okay? So let's say you have to be away from your family for a month because you're going out on a tour. You can choose for that 30 days to focus on the fact that you're not with your family and your family doesn't have you and there's struggles that are involved with that. Or you can focus on the good that you're doing out on the road and the progress you're making towards your goals. And if you're in that state of awareness, that state of mind, you will be far more likely to optimally use the opportunities that are in front of you, because you'll be in a mindset where instead of focusing on like you're in the venue but all you can think about is home, you're in the venue and all you can think about is who do I need to talk to advance us further so I can move my career further financially so that I can support my family more, right? If you change the focus, you can change the feeling and emotion around it. So what you've got to do is you've got to focus on the job at hand, right? And you've got to find a way to make peace with you and your partner at the fact that, listen, I'm going to be out here sometimes and I may come home and I may only have made $200 for us. But like, I promise things will get better eventually, right? And some people may say like, well, you shouldn't say that because you don't know if it's going to get better. Here's what I'll tell you. It will 100% not get better in your music business if you quit it. There's at least a chance that it will get better if you're consistent at it, and there's an even greater chance that you'll succeed if you're willing to be consistent at it and you're willing to learn from your past results and data, okay? Because if you're able to get more knowledge, get more strategies, get more clarity on what the business looks like, what the things need to work, things you need to do to work, then you're going to do it and it will work eventually. Like, for example, I remember the first time that I ever did a one-on-one sales situation where I was selling something right in front of someone's face to them. At first, it's like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can do this. But once you do it, you're like, oh, okay. I'm the type of person that can do this. So, I kind of started going on a tangent there. Sorry, I started losing my train of thought there. But the main thing to talk about with your spouse is this is the type of life that you're signed up for. And so sometimes it's going to be hard. But ultimately, if you're willing to work at the things that work, it will get better. That is a firm belief that I have. Is that if you work on things that don't work, it doesn't matter how hard you work, it will never get better. But if you work at the things that work, it will eventually get better over time. Some people, it gets better in 5 months. Some people, it gets better in a week. Some people, it gets better in a year. Right? But working consistently at it is the only way to actually see results. And that will ultimately reduce your guilt because you know that you're out there making progress on your goals. Okay. The sixth struggle that every single artist and musician has to deal with is overwhelm. I get it. This business has a lot of ins and outs, and it feels like you have to know everything about the business before you can take any action in the business. And that causes this analysis paralysis where we're just like, there's so much to learn, I don't know. Again, this comes down to making a decision as to what the path you're going to take inside this business is, because there are multiple paths. Some people are like, yeah, I'm going to do sync, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this. I'm like, focus on one first. Get one built up. And then once one is built, then we can add a branch, right? We can add a stream. But by that I mean stream of income, not like a song stream. But yeah, the idea is that like there's a lot of overwhelm in this business from that perspective, but there's also a lot of overwhelm from the fact that people just like have jobs. So, like, I say jobs. Some people have one job. Yes, that's great if you have a good job where you can just have one job. A lot of people have 2 jobs now. That is a very common thing now. And on top of having 2 jobs, one of the biggest things you're going to run into is you're going to run into time management issues. Time management issues can probably be one of the biggest reasons you could say that maybe you're feeling stuck inside of your music business, is because how you optimize the time you have out of work is everything. People will waste their lives in the cycle of go to work, get home, and then play on their phone and distract themselves until they fall asleep, get up, go to work, and repeat the cycle. And then sometimes music gets created in that process, sometimes content gets created in the process, every now and then when you kind of feel like it. But if you start actually dedicating time to specific tasks and you make your calendar like authoritative over you, you will start to actually make some progress and feel less overwhelmed. Because I'll tell you what leads to overwhelm: not doing things that you know you should do. That's one of the biggest ways to get to overwhelm. Think back to school. What's the best way to get overwhelmed? Have a big homework assignment, don't do it for months and months and months and months and months, and then like a day before it is due, you have to go write like 10,000 words. That's going to cause some overwhelm. Now, heck, you may work okay, you may work very productively during that process, but you did cause some overwhelm because of that, right? So overwhelm is caused by us sitting there going, I need to do this, but I'm not doing it. I need to do this, but I'm not doing it. That over time will build up a pressure cooker of overwhelm that will eventually just lead to burnout, because you've got so much that you haven't done that you know you need to do, and you don't know which one to start working on first, and so you're just like, I feel defeated and I don't know what to do next. Right? Because we're back to the state where we haven't decided on what the path is, and like we go into this uncertain realm. So here's one of the things that also, on top of having a calendar that is very authoritative over you, that you've determined, is accepting the identity of entrepreneur and understanding that, like, listen, because I'm doing this, this means I'm going to have to dedicate a lot of leisure time that most people would just dedicate to leisure. I'm going to have to dedicate my leisure time to working on my business so that it can grow. Now, I'm not saying completely avoid your relationships and your friendships and your families. You can make time for that, but you need to dedicate a substantial portion of the work that you put into your music business when you have like time outside of work. And some people are like, gosh, so you're saying I basically never stop working? I would, again, change the focus. To me, work is always an exciting thing if I think about it the right way. So for example, if you're ever, I don't want to post a piece of content because I have to shoot a video and I have to edit it and it's so laborious and I don't want to do it. If you're ever having those thoughts, but you know you should, here's what you can do. Think about it differently. Okay, by creating this piece of content, this could be the thing that attracts my dream audience and builds me a fan base basically in one video where I gain thousands and thousands of fans. And overnight, my life could change. How many videos do you want to go create now to test to figure out which one's going to be that one? You see what I'm saying? If you change how you're thinking about it, what you're focusing on, that's going to exponentially improve your feeling of overwhelm. Because for me, what I'm focusing on is not the negative aspects of my business. I'm focusing on the positive results that me doing the boring stuff I don't like doing leads to the positive result that I do want. Right? That's all part of the be, do, have like struggle. Is like I'm trying to become this person that when I feel like I don't really want to do something, I can become the person that actually does it anyway. I don't feel like going to the gym, but you make yourself go anyway, right? That's the type of person we need to be, and accepting that as our new identity is going to be crucial in developing the habits necessary to dedicate our time appropriately so that when we're not at our job or jobs, we can work on our music business. And when you're doing that, you don't just feel completely just completely defeated, right? You have to become the type of person that will dedicate their time wisely to work on the things necessary. And you'll feel energized by that work because you know that you're working towards something that's going to bring you closer to the dream life that you're trying to build. Every single one of us are trying to move closer to a life that we've always envisioned. And this is a way that when you work on something, you actually know I'm getting closer to my goal. Hell, if you can do this at your job, you know that it's like, oh man, if I do good at this job, I get paid and I don't get fired. And because I can get paid, that allows me to put money towards my bills so that I can go over here and work on my music business until I make more money from my music that I can pay this bill with music and I don't have to work that job as much. And then slowly, right, you have this mindset that's different than, all right, gotta go clock in again. All right, gotta go clock in again. I know what that's like, y'all, when you clock in and you kind of just like, here we go. That feeling of, all right, here we go. If you can change the thought of like, oh, dude, yes, if I can get through this day, like I get through this day, something positive is on the other side of that. Oh, dude, when I get to home, I get to work on music now because I got my workday completed. Maybe you can start rewarding yourself for doing things that you typically don't like doing, but you know are good for you. Go to the gym, and if this helps you go to the gym more, reward yourself with a slushie, a icy, a shake after the gym for a minute. Don't do it forever, obviously, but like a small one. Don't go crazy. But you get the idea. It's like I'm going to give myself a little treat for doing something I should be doing so that my brain wants that treat again. I'll go do the work, reward myself for it, and I've built up this sort of habit. This is a habit cycle that you can create for yourself. Okay. The final and seventh struggle that artists and musicians go through starting an independent music business is frustration. Frustration is what I see happening a lot of times, like in threads and Twitter and people posting about how music isn't valued what it used to be valued anymore, and it's so hard. I hate the fact I have to go make content. Again, we have a frame about it where this is all negatives, as opposed to, man, I actually live in an era where I can post content and I can control the presentation of my brand and my art, when back in the day, the label would have controlled every move I made. So now when you post content, it's like, gosh, I have the freedom to create whatever content I want, as opposed to the label is going to basically treat me like a puppet and I'm going to do the bidding of the label. So I want you to think about this. Frustration can lead to the volatility of the business. You know, like, gosh, everything's up and down, my streams, it's so hard, all the jobs, right? But lack of knowledge about what to do about that is also equally problematic, because if you're stuck in a position where your music business is not growing, it's not consistent, it's not doing what it's supposed to do to be a business, that's going to lead to frustration. And if we don't have the knowledge to course correct and figure out an audible to call to make a different move to make it work, we're kind of stuck in the same frustrating cycle where we're frustrated, and then that sort of sours our interpretation of everything. Because think about it like this. Whenever you get a red Toyota, you drive out on the road and all you can see is red Toyotas. Why? Because what's your brain focused on? This red Toyota that you just bought and drove off the lot. Your brain is hyper focused on the red Toyota, so your brain is going to be more prone to looking and finding red Toyotas. The same thing is true with negativity and frustration. If you are focusing on negativity and frustration, your brain will seek out ways to be more frustrated and more negative. So it's a vicious cycle that one of the things that we can do to counterbalance it is change the frame. How do we view everything? Instead of this, like, I posted out a video, it's not working, and having this big emotional attachment to that little outcome, right? What if we viewed everything like a test? What if you were like this mad musical scientist who's like, I'm going to create 1 million pieces of content. No, you're not actually going to create 1 million pieces of content. But you're like, I'm going to create a whole bunch of content, and I'm going to figure out what works. I don't care if I have to post 300 videos. I'm going to post all these different types of videos until I figure out what is resonating with my audience. And in that kind of commitment and viewing everything like a test will take some of the emotional impact out from when you put out a piece of content and it kind of flops. Instead of going, oh, this is a representation of me as an artist and as a human, I'm just so inferior, blah. No, you start looking at it like, oh, this is a test. Cool, I got some data. I put this out there and I thought this was going to be awesome, but it only got like 70 views. What's going on here? What did I do differently in videos that performed well that I didn't do here, which is clearly working against me? You start to view everything as data. And that data helps you make better decisions about what kind of content to create, and it helps sharpen you, and you get better and you grow. And so focusing on these little outcomes, like whether we get a bunch of streams, or not a bunch of streams, excuse me, a bunch of views on our videos and things like that, that's not a healthy mindset. A healthier mindset is like, every single piece of content I put out is a piece of data that I'm going to get information from. And because I have that information, now I can go through and I can actually start to make better decisions. And then you can start to gain more knowledge, read more books about the music business, take more courses, get mentorship, all that kind of good stuff about the music business, so that you can ultimately improve the type of tests that you're running. Some people, like, let's say when it comes to content, right? They're like, I'm going to post this chunk of the song, let's say, my kid's in it. Let's say they're going to post the intro of the song in 5 different settings. Okay, so they're running a test about the intro of the song. But what if you had someone who was a little bit further ahead of you, a peer or a mentor or a coach, that could go, hey, listen, the intro's cool and all, but maybe we should take the chorus, and maybe you should make 5 different settings around the chorus. See, just that simple kind of thing of like, oh, okay, so I was viewing everything as a test, but maybe this was just a test ran too long. Maybe I need to try a different way of looking at it, a different test. That's what can be helpful when you start to gain more knowledge by reading books, taking courses, all that kind of good stuff, right? Is you increase your knowledge about this business to a point where when you get a piece of data, you know more about what that information means, right? A lot of people, they run everything as a test, but they don't know what the information that comes back means, and that can be a problem. So you have to invest in your education to understand what those kind of things are, so that you know what are your key performance indicators, what are all that kind of businessy stuff, right? It's important to invest in yourself, in your brain, to really expand its capacities to learn this stuff. It's really important. So those 7 things right there, those 7 struggles: insecurity, anxiety, isolation, stress, guilt, overwhelm, and frustration, are some of the biggest killers to most people's music businesses. And hopefully today you have gotten a bunch of strategies that will help you combat each of these emotions and struggles when they start to come up in your life, because I know every single musician is going to be affected by one or more of these things. So hopefully today you've gotten enough value and strategies to be able to fight those things off. And if you did get some value, you feel like you learned something helpful and valuable, please hit the subscribe button, the notification bell, the like button, all that good YouTube-y stuff. Leave a comment. It really helps out the channel a lot. If you're interested in working one-on-one with me so we can help you in your music business, so you actually have some direction in it, you can apply for a free strategy call by clicking the link in the description. So if that's something you're interested in, you can check that out. Otherwise, I will see you guys on another video of Musicians Ignite.